गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। We're going to talk of the dangers of India's turn to China. My thumbnail says it all. When we deal with China, let's be clear. China is holding a knife behind its back. And you know whose back it's going into? The Indian back. And this is something which is a constant. And this constant has started appearing even today. Right. As we speak today, later in the day, the foreign minister of China, Wang Yi, is going to have a discussion with Mr. Ajit Doval on the boundary issue. And yesterday, he had a discussion with Mr. Shankar from an external affairs point of view. Let's dive in. Before anything else, we know in White House, Donald Trump met with all the European leaders, including Mr. Zelensky, to come to some viable end to the Russia-Ukraine war. There's a lot of hope that if the Russia-Ukraine war ends and Russia and USA become on the same page or appear to be on coterminous pages, things will ease off on India. But I don't know whether that will happen now. Yesterday, Mr. Peter Navarro's article that India's oil lobby is funding Putin's war machine, that has to stop. And it's a very obnoxious article. I wouldn't say it's an obnoxious article, that very obnoxious views in this article, right, about India. And if this is what a senior advisor to Trump thinks, then we should be very clear that USA is antagonistic to India. This is not going to change. Combine this with what Mr. Lindsey Graham has said, what this fellow has spoken, what Trump himself has tweeted about a dead economy, XYZ. Our equations with USA are on the rocks. And yesterday I discussed it in detail with a very eminent panel of Lieutenant General Gautam Murthy, Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain, Mr. Sunil Pant, Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, and Brigadier Arun Saigal. Right. If that the West is, putting curtains on us, or rather appearing to put curtains on us, you'll turn east, isn't it? And that's what we've done. And there's a lot of charcha in the media that, look, we should turn towards China. We should encourage Chinese investment and start trading. If not US, then China. Well, and that's why Mr. Wang Yi is here. Later this month, our Prime Minister has to go to SCO. And if you think after this it's all fun and games, and we play the Chinese games, let's get to some reality. Get some reality into our head. And it won't happen. Let me put it up front. Already China has set a tone. And that tone I find is quite unacceptable. It's not only not acceptable, it is treacherous. We have to be very clear as to what we are talking when we deal with China. If you go by what our businessmen say, India will be sunk. If India is in this position, it's thanks to our business community. I have no doubt about it. And if those voices are not reined in, we will be in a bigger problem. Okay. Now let's get to the fundamentals. China has a habit of signaling its intent and setting the tone for any talks before it, they start the whole story. And it comes through indirect methods, and it has come. I saw this tweet by Adil Barar, who's based in Taiwan, and where he has picked up an article by a chap called Hu Su. Right? Now, Hu Su, I never read him. I couldn't get hold of that article. But Mr. Adil Barar has put it out in, his tweet. So I picked it up. And I thought I must read this tweet and this, uh, the content of this article out to you, so that we understand where China is with respect to India and what are its, we call it conditions, the base foundation, whatever it is. As per this, as per what Adil Barar says, and I have no reason to distrust him because he's just quoted verbatim, and I'm going to quote that verbatim to all of you so you understand the implications. He says, Hu Su, right? Hai Su, Hai Su. He says, to be honest, under the circumstances of having a border dispute, how do you strengthen dialogue, build mutual trust, and maintain overall friendliness? That's a question he's asking. It's very difficult, right? Difficult does not mean impossible. So that's the opening thing, that there's some positivity, we can do things, right? And then he says, although the clashes were regrettable, at least the two major countries of China and India managed not to open fire, and India ultimately calmed down relatively quickly. So it is India which has calmed down, and China was always calm. Please understand the subtext when we deal with China. Okay. So they are already positing as if India is the belligerent neighbor and China is the calm guy who's going to control India. Then he says China may be vast, but there is not a single piece of territory that can be ceded to others in such a way. So the boundary is very clear. No territorial concession to be given to India. Not a single piece. So whatever their stance on the boundary will remain. And then, remember, they're going to say, oh, put the boundary away. We're not going to talk of that boundary. Let's talk trade. Because they're not going to discuss that boundary. They're not prepared to discuss that boundary, which is the main bone of contention between India and China. Please see how things are evolving and how much we have to look at China. Is China an option? And you'll find it's not. Then he goes on to say, China and India are inescapable neighbors. Both are ancient civilizations. To judge gains and losses merely by temporary or local circumstances has little meaning. The United States has been a nation for less than 300 years. China and India must coexist for the long term. From this perspective, it is better for neighbors to interact more during good times, work out principal guidelines to be respected by both sides for the long term, and get going along on that basis. That is better than anything else. Prima facie, this looks okay, but you club it with the earlier one. What he's saying is the basis for this relationship will be set by China. And then he says, how should talks be conducted? Mutual respect. Isn't that important? If one side insists only on McMahon line, then what is there left to discuss? So we have to get off the McMahon line. And here comes the double speak. Interestingly, I'll touch upon it later, but I'm touching upon it now itself. The McMahon line, when it was drawn, surveyed, a good part of the McMahon line is surveyed and delimited. Okay. Also covers the India-Myanmar-China border. It also covers the Myanmar-China border. It's not just India-China border. The McMahon line also defines the Myanmar-China border because Myanmar was part of the British Empire. Very interestingly, China has accepted the McMahon line till the tri-junction between India, Myanmar, and China. It's only on our part they have not accepted. And we'll touch upon this. But they want us to discard that and look ahead. So they've set the tone already. Please understand. So is that tone acceptable to us? No. We feel that the boundary status is the most important thing. They also feel so. In that, they're very clear that there's no concession to be given to India. And India has to change. They'll set the tone. The relationship could be for next 3 civilizations but it is the Chinese civilization which is the greater one. All this has been said in this article. I'm not had got hold of the full article. If I get hold of the full article, I will share it with you people. But I go with Adil Barar because he's a good person, right? And I mean, when I say good person, uh, professionally, right? Then what has Wang Yi said? He came and gave a statement, right? I'm starting from there. Now this again it come out on a tweet because there's no official statement which I could get hold of overnight. So the tweet is what we go by. He says we maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas and resume the Indian pilgrimage to Mount Kailash and Kailash Mansarovar in the Tibet Autonomous Region. In his original tweet, it is in the Chinese names. We shared confidence to dispel interference, expand cooperation, and to further consolidate the momentum of improvement, development of China-India relations, so that while pursuing our respective rejuvenation, we can contribute to each other's success and provide the more needed certainty to Asia and the world. Very alluring. So what he has spoken has nothing to do with what his agenda is. What is Wang Yi's agenda? Talk nice, do some talk, essentially to ensure that Mr. Modi goes to SCO, and in the SCO meet he meets Mr. Xi Jinping, and some concessions are worked out. I don't know what. What I'm hearing is some border concessions, but I'll touch upon that. That thing might come out later in the day, or it might not also, but it'll eventually come out. But let me start guessing those and we'll talk of that. Okay? Because something about the border has to be given, because that's politically the most sensitive thing here and there. Though they don't mention it, we mention it. And only when that heat goes off, that things can go ahead. And what they're aiming is absolutely treacherous. Let's be very clear. I'm putting it up front. Okay? So that we go and deal with the Chinese with open eyes. Our External Affairs Minister has spoken of three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, mutual interest. He said this last time when he went, and this is what virtually a prime minister, this has been the Indian stance. We emphasize that differences must not become disputes, nor competition convert into conflict. But that is also gainsaying nothing. You get nothing out of this kind of anodyne statement, because we already need land dispute with them. Okay, we have a lot of disputes with Chinese. So to couch it to say no, we shouldn't have differences and turn into disputes, fine. It's good for him to talk, when you're dealing diplomatically with a difficult neighbor. But let's understand, there is a dispute with China and we should not take it out. And right. He spoke of economic and trade issues, pilgrimages, people-to-people contacts, river data sharing, which is iffy. So far they have not done. Border trade, connectivity, and bilateral exchanges. The outlines, these are the things which they're supposed to have discussed, but what is there in this, we don't know. And here I have a problem with our government, because the government at times does not put out what they've actually spoken. Why? Because many things don't come out even in the parliament, given the animosity between the government and the opposition. So there is an issue here. And then, of course, he spoke. I'm going through Mr. Jaishankar's statement. The basis for any positive momentum in our ties is the ability to jointly maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas. It is essential that de-escalation process move forward. So a new story has come called de-escalation. Okay. Disengagement, de-escalation, de-induction, we'll discuss this. Then he says we seek a fair and balanced multipolar world, including a multipolar Asia, which is completely anathema to China. China feels it's a unipolar Asia, where China is the only pole. And the reply from Wang Yi doesn't suggest that he is prepared to even look at a multipolar Asia. In the current environment, there is clearly the imperative of maintaining and enhancing stability in the global economy as well. So that's an outreach to the trade. That they will more than be happy to take it up, because whatever you do is for their economy. The way, I mean, they'll twist it and we'll talk of it. The fight against terrorism in all forms and manifestation is another major priority. Well, it's there, but our priority of terrorism and their definition of terrorism completely different. Let's not hedge. Overall, it is our expectation that our discussions would contribute to building a stable, cooperative, and forward looking relationship between India and China, one that serves both our interests and addresses our concerns. Let's see what happens. Let's analyze this. The first part of analysis. Again, this has come out in Chinese media. What is highlighted in red is this. The Chinese have put out an Indian version of what Mr. Shankar said in the Chinese media. As per that, the Chinese version of the statement has Mr. Shankar saying Taiwan is part of China. This is dangerous. They've already misquoted us. So are we accepting this one China principle? Are we saying that Taiwan is part of India? They have quoted it. You cannot refute it because diplomatic niceties don't suggest, or diplomatic niceties suggest that you don't refute it. But how do you counter this? So they've done a gray zone move already. So they have put out an article which has laid down the conditions for the border and things like that, McMahon line. And then now they have misquoted and put it out in the media. Already they have done it. What are we doing about it? Do we have a game plan? I don't see that. Okay. Let's face facts. When you deal with China, there is no trust. There's no trust at all. It's not only between India and China, there's no trust. There's no trust between China and the rest of the world, except, of course, Pakistan. Even Pakistan doesn't accept China's word, or they don't trust China completely. If they did trust China completely, they wouldn't have flipped to USA. Whatever deal we work out, whichever manner, whether it is trade, economy, commerce, defense, whatever, border, whatever, should have political acceptability. And when I say political acceptability, it is just not the political party's acceptability. It has to be the acceptability of the people of India, expressed through our politics. Right? At this point of time, the government might cash on the fact that turning to China is a good option because of our problems with the USA. But is that why the reason we should go there? Because you have a divorce here, you marry the next available girl. Is that the way you live? Can't. So you have to, think through this whole story. You can't go there on a rebound from USA. You can't go there because Russia is putting pressure on us to join RAC and form it, and then look like fools. So these are some fundamentals which I'm putting across to all of you. Now everyone talks BRICS. BRICS is a uncertain platform. I have also spoken of BRICS. But BRICS is not a very certain platform, given the fact that China will always position itself to its advantage. Do you have the capability to stop that? Or do you use BRICS as a platform for opening one-to-one negotiations with countries? Like I said, Brazil. For that matter, Russia. Or for that matter, other countries. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all these countries. Okay. And de-dollarization is not an option for us. Let's be very clear. You can't be hot-headed about the whole thing and say, no, no. Will you support China in yuanization? Is a BRICS currency feasible? It's not. Is Indian rupee strong enough? It's not. If these three are not there, you don't have an option but to go with the dollar. And this is something our government has already said. Notwithstanding this, there are some hotheads in India who say, oh, let's do de-dollarization. Or de-dollarization is going to have day after tomorrow. It can't happen. It will not happen. You're still tied to the dollar. If you're still tied to the dollar, you don't have an option other than going to the dollar. You are tied to the USA. Right? You shouldn't run towards China for the sake of as a political rebound or a geopolitical rebound. That's the worst case scenario for us. Already there's pressure, or the American acrimony has started. Oh, India has started cozying up to Russia and China. Right? Well, that will happen. That talk will come. That's not an issue for us. But we shouldn't be actually doing that. That's the point. Okay. We should deal with China on its own merit. What are the issues? The border is still the major issue. In fact, if there's one thing which has come out in this visit, the border is still the main issue. They want to kill that issue here so that when our Prime Minister goes to the SCO meet, this doesn't come up. See what the Chinese are doing. They want to kill it here and resolve it here and go with the solution so that the leaders just give a solution like the pullback at Kazan. The issue of Tibet and Dalai Lama is still on the cards. It will not go for the next 10 years. So if it doesn't go, then there's no peace, there's no negotiation. Will China negotiate on the Dalai Lama? We know it, they can't. And they won't. Will you let go? You won't. So what is the via media? Do you use it as a leverage? You're not able to. Politically, you're not even spoken of it. You've given some indications. Beyond that, what? We are besotted with USA and worried about China. But how do you sort China out? You have a lot of leverages. In fact, the way I look at it, we have more leverages with China than with USA. What about the dam on Brahmaputra? Except that anodyne statement saying, we should share river sharing data and all that. A huge dam is coming up just across the border, which has strategic ramifications. What is our policy on that dam? Except that a chief minister has said what he had to say. In fact, two chief ministers, Arunachal Pradesh and Assam, both of them have said what they have to do. What is the position of the government of India? We don't know. Now, if you talk of trade, so far trade has been one way. We import, very little we export. Can you balance it? China has never agreed. China has never agreed to import more from you because they have weaponized this whole story. Even now, when they don't give you rare earths, they don't give you, fertilizers. It's weaponization. So they are telling you, unless you come and speak what we want you to speak, we'll not give you all this. They've already done that. And you are not seeking any equivalent. And we still feel that, we shouldn't import. We cannot. I've heard some people say, oh no, the only way to reduce import from China is to make those people come and set up factories here so that this is our product and then we don't have to import. That's stupid. Would you like to reduce imports? Why should not our own government give incentives for people to produce those things which we have to import from China? Subsidies. Okay. Are they doing it or not? No. So you want FDI from China? Something's wrong with us then. And mind you, these are very senior people talking. And see how China is playing us. I've only one day's talk and one day's thing. By tomorrow, day after, more will come. In the process of a rebound from USA, you shouldn't surrender to China. Important. Remember, they have barred you from the nuclear supplies group. They don't permit a reconstitution of the Security Council. Everyone wants, except China. They don't want India to be on the Security Council with a veto. They support jihadis still. They support terror still. They support Pakistan still. We have forgotten Op Sindoor so fast. Can you? After all, we fought not only against Pakistan, we fought against China indirectly. So these things can't be wished away. Yes, we have to deal, we must deal with them. That's the way I look at it. But we have to be very clear as to what we are planning to do or not do. And then China has a policy of impeding peace, your progress. It's an official policy. What happened in Foxconn? Now they say Foxconn, you see this article which came out yesterday in Money Control. The Foxconn Bengaluru unit commences operation with iPhone 17 production. Great, iPhone 7 or 17, whatever it is. Great. But if you read this, it's very clear that overnight, the Chinese people who are here in this were pulled back. And people went all around and got alternate people and put here, and the factory is running. Well, this is a very interesting case we have to learn from. Do you need the Chinese to come and teach us technology or set up factories here? Why can't you do the same thing like what happened in Foxconn or Apple? So Apple here, phones made in India have to be sold in USA. That's the hard truth. And slowly the thing in China is coming down. But they have made a very conscious effort to ensure that this process is derailed. You got over it. You have a model. Can you apply this model for other sectors also? Can you ensure that those problems we had with Vivo and all those funny Oppo and all those funny Chinese handphones, mobile sets, are not repeated here, and that money is not sucked out? That's what there. We had to take all of them to the court. Or you can't. How do you ensure that tomorrow a solar maker comes here, sets up a factory with Benami people, and runs it? A Chinese chap sits here and runs it with your names. And that's what happened earlier. All the Chinese were allowed to incorporate a local partner and produce solar panels. They produced it. But all those fellows were Benami who had nothing to do. They were given some money and end of story. Can our government ensure that doesn't happen? If that happens, like earlier, then to fir fayda kya hua? So there are a lot of dangers in this whole story. I'll give it. The government would be aware of all this. After all, they are the ones who are going to handle this. But, well, it's my job to put it across. Okay. Look at the economy of China. It's going down by the day. And I have to do a full story on China, which I've not done so far, because events are overtaking us. Just today I was reading and listening to a podcast and reading after that, because I don't go by just a podcast. I see a podcast, pick up an idea, then read. What's happening in China, which I've been talking of from a long time, it keeps getting corroborated. whether it's consumption or investment or exports, everything is subsidized in China today. And where is the subsidy coming from? Bonds. Where is the bond being financed from? Banks. How do banks have money to finance all this? From people's savings? So people are putting money in these bonds. That bonds are being used to finance subsidies. Ultimately, people at the bottom are losing out. So China is increasingly becoming a rich state and the poor country, poor people. This is what I've been saying. At some point, this will stop. And there's this podcast called Digging into China. Short clips. He comes out with 17, 20 minutes. Very interesting. And he feels China has another 5 years before it starts wavering. I go with it. Because I've always said a combination of many factors point that the period between 28 to 30, maybe 32, those 5 years, you can't put a finger and say it'll happen on 30, but 30 being the median plus minus 2 years, you're going to see a drastic change in China. We need to be understanding this. I'm not justifying what I'm telling you. Are we alive to this situation of what is China ahead, going ahead, before we do a deal today? Demographically, they're collapsing. It's no more. It's a collapse. That demographic collapse has major implications. In this regard, time is on our side. Let's not be getting into China in a hurry. There's a perceptible military weakness and a political turmoil. Their weapons have failed. We know that. I'm not saying anything new. There's so many people saying this all over the world that their weapons have failed. Their generals have been sacked. And their own ships are hitting their own ships. So, nikamma, useless. Add to that this political turmoil. Just before I started this podcast, I was listening to Lee's Real Talk. She talks of in this forthcoming meet at Baida Hai, something happening. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's this political turmoil. Because Zhang Yugjia has already got hold of the thing, and every, Baida Hai security, he says, will be provided by the army, and he's controlling the army. We don't know whether, and there are rumors and propaganda within China which says Xi Jinping is in control. So there's a slugfest going on there, and that's weakness. It should tell you something. And we need to understand one major thing. Any deal with China frees China from a two-front situation. If China is freed from India and it uses this leverage with whatever is happening chaos in USA, from a two-front situation, it goes into a no-front situation, then China is dangerous. Understand? There's this thing which I spoke about China 2-3 days back and this Putin deal. And I said something. China is seeing that Trump likes deal over deterrence. So if China gets the thing, okay, Trump is going to do a deal with Ukraine and Russia, or rather propagate a deal with Russia, and he's already made some deal with Putin, and which means that deal is more important than deterrence. So China will be tempted to make a deal with USA and ditch Taiwan. Forget about US deterrence. So if that is the case, that front is also free. This front also you will be free. China has got out of the jail. Then there's no leverage in the next couple of years. So we have to be very conscious of this. I don't know whether the mandarins of our government are thinking like this. The reason why I am putting all this is I don't see such articles also. I don't see such articles also coming in our media. So there are major issues. Let's talk of the border dynamics. 62, we know that they took Aksai and other occupied areas by force. Post 62, they tried to do something in Sandroanchu in Arunachal Pradesh. That's the time, probably they started thinking of South Tibet. After 2003, they started claiming Arunachal as South Tibet. I've shown this slide to many people and on my channel earlier. But we need to understand this, what's happening. After 2020, we've had this Demchok and Dipsang face-offs. While the face-offs have receded, but the boundary issue still remains. Today we're going to talk of this. This man has come to talk of this. He is not talking of the Aksai Chin. Or we should be going there. There's no mention. And already those chaps have said, no, don't talk of McMahon line. What are we doing? As a nation, are we so besotted with USA that we can't wake up to the reality of China? Well, this is the thing. This is the McMahon line. There is no dispute on the McMahon line. So look, barring some parts of the McMahon line, the Chinese generally respect the McMahon line. That's the interesting part. They recognize the McMahon line. Okay, they recognize the McMahon line because that is why they went 20 kilometers north of the McMahon line in 1962. Otherwise, they were fell south. They could have not gone back. They stayed here. They could have stayed here. They went 20 kilometers back. And especially across Bumla and all, if you actually now go see in 62, they retreated 20 kilometers behind Bumla. There's a place called Sonasong. They went right back there. Why is it that they come back here? And the major problem is here in this area. We know that. So, but let's be clear about one thing. China is sitting pretty on what it considers as its India-China border. They're very clear that, look, this is what we want and this is what we've got, but we will continue to threaten India with South Tibet and we'll talk of, everything in Ladakh. And they'll go to Bhutan. They will go to the, south of Arunachal Pradesh. Deep in Bhutan, they'll start claiming they're pressurizing Bhutan to give up Doklam. All those things they're trying. And they're trying now through Nepal. We should have no doubts about what China is up to. So all these mandarins who are talking of trade need to have their head examined. Yeah, now you're going to hear these terms, disengagement. We have already had disengagement. Now people are talking of de-escalation. In fact, our EM also has said de-escalation. That means troops will be taken out from there. So there are issues in this. Then you can think of de-induction. They'll talk next of de-induction also. But have we thought of the time over which all this will be done? What is the plan? What is the verification process? How will you do patrolling? How will the infrastructure development continue or not continue? Do we have a plan? We don't have. I don't know. I mean, we might have a plan, but the outlines of that should be public. Okay. And then we should know how to handle these newly created buffer zones. Okay. See, let me give you what this buffer zone story is. Let's say this is the line, which is this is the Indian perception of the LAC. Now China has a perception of its LAC, and it is here, right? This is the Chinese perception of the. There's no problem here. There's no problem here. But here, in say any area, arbitrarily. So this is the buffer zone they've created. Earlier, we used to go and patrol up till here. They used to come and patrol up till here. In this area, there used to be clashes. And that's what happened in Pangang So and all those places. And even in Galwan. They were blocking us, yeah, wo. Now you created, the Chinese have gone beyond the Indian perception of the LAC. The Chinese have come this side of, we have come this side of the Chinese perception of the LAC. And we've been carrying out some patrolling, predetermined patrolling in the buffer zone, and especially in Depsang area and all that. But is that the final way? How do you handle these? If we have accepted the buffer zone, that means you have already changed the nature of the LAC. And you said, okay, no, you can come up to your perception and do patrolling and go back and tell us only. So this story needs deeper understanding and deeper, thinking than this. This is not the thing which I want people to see. This is what we need to think of. Do we have this in our national policy? It's something which we have to very seriously think of. Okay, let's look ahead a bit. I'll go ahead. Right. You go back to the Simla Convention on this border, all that. The Simla, this is the fundamental thing when the McMahon line was put on ground and all that. 1914, Simla. I can hold a full discussion on this for the next 2 hours on this, but I'll go only short. That 1914 Simla Convention was between Great Britain, China, and Tibet. Fundamentally, the convention was to draw the border between Tibet and China, not Tibet and India. This was never under contention. But that fellow Ivan Chen, who was a representative of the Chinese emperor, he ran away from Shimla. But this McMahon line was never discussed. And that is what point I said. And later, McMahon line was repudiated by China with India, but accepted with Myanmar. But of course, like I said, they generally accepted it. Interestingly, the McMahon line is only up to the tri-junction between Bhutan, India, and China or Tibet. Beyond that, the border between Sikkim and Tibet is delimited. It is surveyed. That's a border actually. That's not a LAC. Few people don't understand. The central sector has got a few pockets. And of course, the entire, once you go to northern, eastern Ladakh, that the ball game is completely different. And the thing is that in the 1914 Shimla Convention, the western border was never discussed. There was no contention. It was taken for granted that it existed. We have to understand this. And then the whole lot of lines, which I keep showing. Last time also I showed, everywhere I keep showing this. See, the current line, the current extent of Aksai Chin is based on the Johnson line. That's the Sino-Indian border. It is this. Okay. There's a MacDonald-McCartney line, which is supposed to be the informal border till 1959. Like, that's based on the Laktakang range. Let me show it fully. Yeah. Okay. There's a green line. And then there's a Foreign Office line, which was accepted. The British has also played their tricks. That is the orange line. And today, they have constructed the Xinjiang Tibet road through this. Right? This is the road, and this is the road by which all the problems started, because they had to connect. And this is the LAC today. And the LAC is generally the alignment of the Chinese claim line. That's why I said before, they are sitting pretty on what they consider as their LAC and their border. So they have no incentive. And to ensure that this is not solved, because they know that we will not accept it, they've asked South Tibet and Arunachal and all that, and it's got its own dynamics. And remember, this is not the only problem. They also entered Gilgit Baltistan, POK, which is our territory. The government has just not done anything about it. We keep saying, oh, we'll take it, we'll take it, we'll take it. But what happened? All our even our Raksha Mantri says, oh, we'll take it when it falls into your lap. Yeah, this is not a apple like Isaac Newton's, it will fall on your head to show gravity. You have to akarshan hona chahiye na. Gravity is also akarshan. Have you done anything for that? So far, zero. Zero. What about Shaksagam Valley? Illegally ceded to China by Pakistan. What have we done about that? That has not come into today's talk at all. Or have we said, have you taken that? That's mine. Please give it back. We've not. And what is their macro perception? This is something which I keep repeating. We have to understand. This is a very important point. What India wants from China is permanent and irreversible as per their thinking. It's permanent. Because we want a solution to the border. It's permanent. Once that happens, they have no problem and we have no problem. But they feel it differently. What China wants from India, they feel is reversible. That is normalizing bilateral relations, going away from USA. This is actually now you're not doing well with USA, so you're turning towards China. Tomorrow you'll start doing well with USA, you'll turn away. This turn you can always do geopolitically. So they are worried about that. Trade routes and normal relations you can do today, tomorrow you can close. So they feel that if China accedes to the demand of this border, China is the loser in the long run. They'll have no leverage over you. So they'll never settle it. So if they don't settle it, then what are you talking with them for trade? You think they'll do trade with us? That's stupid, actually. And there's this issue of simultaneous rise of China and India. We are not accustomed to each other's borders because there was a buffer called Tibet that vanished, and you come to each other. The collusion of interest is more. Your collusion of interest is no more on the border. It is also in the IOR. It is also in other regions. You now entered Africa. You entered Latin America with collusion of interest. Tomorrow, if you want to do well with, reach out to Brazil, which means that you're competing with China there. Because China has a trade of $160 billion with Brazil, and Brazil exports more to China. Our thing is only $12 billion. So there's a lot of competition. So your scope of collusion of interests between India and China have increased multifold. That's why it's written in the end. It's no more about the border. It is about maritime security, regional connectivity, Indo-Pacific order, cyber security, space, weapons. All these things are there. And the fact that they're trying to, break your kneecap so that you don't progress. A lot of things which we have to think of. So the questions which I have to ask, and which we as Indians have to ask, which our government has to ask itself, are very important. Right? What are they? How far should we go with China? How far should we go away from USA? Both are there. I'm just not for trusting USA anymore. That's something which is done. We have to find new ground for ourselves. How far can we depend on Russia? How much can we carve an area of comfort in the geopolitical arena which does not involve USA and China or China? What is our comfort zone which you say, okay, It doesn't matter how our issue with USA is, doesn't matter what it is with China, we'll continue with each other. Do we have such relationships? How do you expand these relationships so that you get a certain amount of permanency and a certain amount of comfort? We should not be a tennis ball between USA and China. Not with the kind of economy we have. If you're going to be the fourth largest economy, which we are, and the third largest economy in a couple of years, we can't be a tennis ball between these two jokers. You need to make your own path based on your strength. We need to talk less and do more. You need consensus and reform. That's the need of the hour. If you don't have political consensus, you don't have consensus of people, will not go far. Investment in defense is a must. If you analyze the Prime Minister's talk from the ramparts of the Red Fort, everything points to defense. Yet we are not investing in it. You can't progress without, going ahead in defense. Tomorrow and day after, 19th, 20th, 21st, we will shoot a NOTAM for the firing of the Agni, 4,700 kilometers. That's what is there. This is right across the Indian Ocean. What for? Agni. Is it a re-entry test? You do a re-entry test, MIRV test. When it happens, we'll discuss that. I'll come back and discuss that in detail, implications of that in detail. Your power has gone up exponentially. You'll be one of the few countries which has the MIRV capability, demonstrated MIRV capability. Immediately things change. And then you have to think, Surakshit Bharat is a Viksit Bharat. A Viksit Bharat is a Surakshit Bharat. Our times ahead are great, challenging. For one moment, I'm not going to even say that go back to USA. Sorry. That we have burned that bridge. Right? We are not interested in that anymore. That bridge to be redone, we'll have a transactional relationship with them. I have no doubt about it. Right? But to be a strategic partner with USA is done and dusted. Let's accept that. How you trade with China, how you trade with USA now transactionally, both of them we have to do transactional relationship. Only thing that transactions between these two have to be different. And like I said, how do you find a common ground and expand it? Are the challenges in front of us. Right? This is where I finish. If you like this video, please press the like button, subscribe to Gunner Shot. And also join in as members. I'll be grateful to all of you. And if you have any issues, any points, any new subjects you want me to cover, let me know. A lot of people are reaching out to me through the email. I'll try and put up a mechanism where I can start conversing with you. I'm open to it. Right? With this, thank you.